Hello and welcome. In this video, I'll be showing you how I made this walk cycle. I'll be using Toon Boom Harmony Premium, but don't worry if you don't have that because you will still find this video helpful if you're using another software or just want to learn about walk cycles. This character you see here is a cutout character or puppet rig. So instead of drawing each frame, I'm going to be manipulating different parts to achieve my desired pose. But if you're drawing yours, that's fine. In previous videos of this series, I show how I built this rig in Toon Boom Harmony. And in the last video, I covered some animation basics, so feel free to check those out if you need to. Ken Harris, who is a famous traditional animator at Warner Brothers, once said,
"A walk cycle is the first thing to learn, because walk cycles are about the toughest thing to do right."
As many animators will tell you, a great reference to use for walk cycles, as well as a whole bunch of other movements, is Richard Williams' Animation Survival Kit. It's a fantastic book that I highly recommend you get your hands on if you're able to. To start with, we'll be referring to this image in particular, which you can find with a quick Google image search if you don't have the book. The basic walk cycle is made up of 5 key poses. The contact, which is where both feet are touching the floor. The down, where one foot takes the weight of the step and the mass of the body comes down, which would be the lowest point of the walk. The pass, which is the halfway point of the step, where one leg passes the other. The up, where the leg is thrown out to give momentum before landing on the contact position. But this is only half the cycle, because it consists of one step rather than 2. So these poses would be repeated, but this time with the limbs in the opposite position until we come back to the contact pose we started with to complete the cycle, and therefore we will be creating 8 drawings in total. If you were to look at someone's walk in real life, there generally wouldn't be an obvious up and down pose, and looks more like a simple transition in between the contacts and passes. But because this is animation where everything tends to be exaggerated, we include them. To quote Richard Williams, "When we trace off a live action walk, it doesn't work very well. It works in the live action, but when you trace it accurately, it floats. Nobody really knows why. So we exaggerate the ups and downs." When you first start your walk cycle, you might be tempted to have your character in a profile view. That's okay for practice and to understand how a walk cycle works. However, if you're making an animation, I recommend you use a quarter angle, as that's common practice in a studio setting because it looks a lot more appealing to the viewer when we can see more of the character. Just like you would do when having your character in an idle pose or speaking to another character. So I will be covering both side and quarter cycles. I'm going to be animating this walk cycle on 2s, which means every pose or drawing is going to be held for 2 frames, which again is common practice in an animation production studio generally speaking. It's an efficient way to create animations without compromising on animation quality and having to draw every single frame, which would require more work. We are going to be working at 24 frames per second, which is the standard for animation production in America, but this will work just fine if you're working at 25 frames per second, which is the broadcast standard for Europe. If you're working at a lower frame rate, like 12 frames per second, it would look slower and choppier, but you'd be able to achieve the same walk by working on 1s instead. If you're working at a higher frame rate, it will look smoother and faster, so you'd probably have to adjust the timing and add more in-betweens. You could even work on 3s or 4s if you wanted, and none of these would be wrong, it just depends on what you're making the animation for and what style you want to achieve. But in this tutorial, I'm going to be working on 2s at 24 frames per second. So because we are making 8 drawings, our animation will span over 16 frames. Now, because I'm using a cutout rig, I'm at a slight advantage because I'm not drawing anything. But also, I don't have to worry so much about maintaining proportions across multiple frames, because they're already there for me to move and rotate, much like a 3D rig, and therefore it's going to be quicker to pose and animate. So if you're drawing your frames, just be aware of your proportions, such as the length of your limbs. And a good way to do that is to start with a rough pass, so then you can tweak it until you're happy with it, and then go over it with your final line work and color. I'll have these poses available as an image for you to download on my Gumroad, in case you want to use them as a reference for your animation. If you're using Toon Boom Harmony and you'd like to use this particular rig, I've made it available on my Gumroad, and that will also have this walk cycle animation included in the scene file if you wanted to take a closer look at it. And finally, a list of useful Toon Boom Harmony animation keyboard shortcuts will be available too. Links for all of these in the description below. So firstly, two things I want to mention before we begin. We're not going to be moving his position as he walks, but instead we're going to be doing like a treadmill style walk, as if everything else around him was moving. It might feel a bit strange at first, but it will be easier in the long run, especially when we want to reuse that animation in another scene. So then all we have to do is use the path peg above the master peg to move him from one point to the other, making sure it's moving at the correct speed so his feet don't slide. And as a side note, I've had a few comments asking how to add things like props and backgrounds and characters into a new scene, and I will be explaining all of that in an upcoming video. Secondly, we're not going to be animating straight ahead, meaning starting at the beginning and animating all the way through to the end, but instead we'll be working on the contact poses first, and then the passes, and then the ups and downs. So here is Sunny, our character, in a profile view to begin with. And you'll notice that the back leg is in front of and a little bit higher than the near leg. And that's just to make it look a little bit more appealing and give the illusion of perspective. So to begin with, we are going to be doing the contact poses, which are these ones. We're going to move this leg a little bit forward because as you walk, your hips also rotate. So we're moving that forward, and then this back leg, we will move backwards like that. So let's take this front leg and we're just going to move it to about here. And we'll move that foot up as well. And now that we've got that foot where we want it, we can add in a guideline. Now, Toon Boom has got its own tool for guidelines, but you can just draw that in if you want. So we're going to be making two guidelines because if you remember, the back foot is higher than the near leg. So let's just put that there. And then we will move this leg backwards. And let's bend that foot as well. We've got a deformer on that foot, so we're just going to move that up there. Like that, and then we can move our guide. Let's rotate that foot as well. So there we go, we've got our guides in, so we can lock that now. And I'm just going to move that body a little bit more forward. I might exaggerate those a little bit more. And the arms move in the opposite direction to the legs. So let's take that arm, we're going to move it back, and this arm we're just going to move forward. And we'll have a little bit of a bend in that arm as well. So that's contact pose 1 done. We're not going to worry about the timing and pacing for now. We're just going to focus on those key poses. So we're going to copy and paste that. So now we can swap those legs around. So I'm going to bring this one forward now. And I'm going to bring this one back to about there. So let's move that one out of the way for now. And then this one is going to be the straight leg. Can reset that foot by using this button here when we're on the deformer. So then let's move that leg to here because it's the back leg, making sure it is lining up with that top line there. And then this back leg. So again, this back leg is going to be slightly bent, and then we can adjust that foot, give it a bend. So there we go. We've got the two contacts there, just with opposite legs. Let's do the same with the arms. So we're going to select that arm, and then we'll bring that forward a little bit. And then the back arm we'll bring backwards. And we can even bring that logo back a little bit as well. Okay, the two contacts are done. So I'm actually going to take that first contact pose and just paste it here. We won't be including it in the final cycle, but that will help us with the other key poses. So now I'm going to do the passes, which are these poses here. So in order to do that, we're just going to push these keyframes down the timeline. I'm going to press Shift plus to do that. And I'm going to mark these green, just so we know that they are our contact poses. So for our passing, we are going to interpolate or tween these, and that will help us determine where the middle position for this leg is going to be. So we'll do this one first, and we can press this button or Control K to put a tween in there. So if we go here, this is the exact halfway position between this one and this one. So this leg here is going to be coming back. So if you imagine the floor is going this way, that leg there is going to come back, and it does need to be straight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a horizontal guide, and I'm going to put it in between the top of that foot there, just so we know where our foot is going to be. And the reason why that's important is because the character is maintaining his speed as he walks. He's not speeding up, he's not slowing down, and therefore the foot placement is going to be evenly positioned throughout the key poses, or at least the ones that are making contact with the floor. So I want this foot to stay here. Because we've done that tween, we know that's where the foot should be. And this leg needs to be straight, so I'm putting that straight there. I'm gonna reset the position of this foot, and then I'm gonna move it back, and then we can make that foot straight then. So now that we've got that, I'm gonna take the whole character, and I'm just gonna move him up so that it matches that bottom horizontal ruler there. And that's what we want, because as the character goes into the passing position, he gets higher. So we've got that contact, and then on the pass, he gets higher because his leg has straightened out. So now we can focus on our other leg. And with that other leg, I'm just going to move it forward a little bit, and then I can bring that foot back to about there. So with the foot that comes off the floor, you don't have to have them evenly spaced out like you would with the leg that was on the floor, because as it comes off the floor, it will probably ease out. So I'm going to take that foot, I'm going to reset it, going to rotate it there, and I'm just going to use the deformer just to give it a slight curve. So there we go, we've got one pass there, and you'll notice I've got onion skinning on as well. That's so we can see the next leg's position and also the previous leg's position as well. So one of the things about making a walk cycle smooth is you want to take note of the previous position and the next position of the leg, so that the leg isn't like jumping all over the place. And the next position is going to be the next pass. So again, we're gonna put a tween in there, and we're gonna F6 that. So this time the back leg is the one that's touching the floor in the middle. So I'm gonna press this button here, which is toggle solo mode. So I can tick that, and that will just show this leg. And I'm gonna put that ruler so it's in the middle there, and then we can straighten out this leg. We'll bring that back. We'll reset the position of that foot, make it nice and straight. So again, we're going to select the whole character, and we're just going to bring it up so that it meets that guide there. There we go. And if we check both of the passes, we just want to make sure they're the same height, which they are more or less. And that's just so we've got an even flow as he goes up and down. So we don't want like that height fluctuating all over the place. So this leg, let's put our onion skin on. We're just going to move that a little bit more forward. This leg can come back, and we'll reset the position of that foot, bring it back a bit, and just like we did with the other one, give it a little bit bend. It's probably best actually to get your guides sorted when he's in his idle stance, his default stance, just because you know that will be the correct distance between each foot there. So now, because we've used that tween, we don't need to move the arms yet. We'll have to do some adjustments on those later on. But now we've got our two contact poses, and we've got our two passes. So next we're going to work on the down poses. And they come after the contact poses. So we're going to move these down, just like we did before. And we're going to tween it, so we know that our floor foot needs to be here. So let's move our vertical ruler over to the middle of that foot. So we're going to tween that. We're going to keyframe it, and then we're going to move it down because this is the lowest point of the walk cycle. So let's move that down and make sure it's a little bit lower than that one, which it is. We know our foot needs to be there, and we need to have a little bit of a bend in this leg here. So let's bring that up, and then we can bring this down. I'm going to reset that foot, make sure it's nice and straight, and we just want to keep bending it until it matches with this line here. We could even bring that up a little bit as well. Let's focus on this back leg now. So with this back leg, we're going to bring that leg back, because this is going to be the position where the leg is furthest away. So I can bend that foot a little bit more, and I'm going to adjust that shape so that it matches with our leg. And you'll notice that I've only moved it past the previous contact pose leg just a little bit, because we want that easing. And as I mentioned in the previous video, the closer the element is to the previous one, the slower it will be. So now we can do the next down pose. So we'll F6 that. And just so we know what our passing positions are, let's mark those another color, yellow. And then these are our downs here. So this is the leg that's on the floor. So we'll start with this one, move our ruler. We'll get the whole character and we'll just bring him down a bit just to match with that down pose as well. So there we go. That looks good to me. And then we can bend this leg. It's not quite there. So let's bring it up a little bit more. This leg is going to come past again, slightly past that back leg. Move that foot down. So now we've got our contacts, we've got our passes, and we've got our downs. And then the final pose will be the ups. And the ups come after the passes. So we're going to make space for those. We'll go on the passes and push those down again, doing a little tweeny tween. And this is going to be the highest point of the walk cycle. So with this one, we're looking at this leg here, comes down, passes, and then goes back. So this is the position we want it to be at. So we'll put our ruler there. And this particular leg needs to be straight, as we can see from our reference. So let's straighten that out, bring it to there. We're going to bring that foot down more as well, because we want him to be on his tippy toes. So let's bring that up. And let's straighten this out here. And with this leg, we are going to bring it in line with that front leg there. And we could put it in between this leg and this leg, but I'm going to actually favor that front leg there to make it look like it's slowing down slightly. So because this is the highest point as well, let's bring that character up to about there, just comparing it with the previous pose. So you can see he's rising up there. Okay, that looks good to me. And we'll do the same with this one. So this is going to be our floor leg here. That looks like it's in a good position already. So yeah, let's straighten out this leg. Let's bend that foot. Have him on his tippy toes. And then we're going to move it up so that it matches that back guide there. Let's just compare that one with this one. So this one's a little bit higher. So let's bring it down a little bit. And we could put more of a bend in here. And then we'll do this other leg. So with this front leg, I'm not going to move it past the position in front. I'm just going to match it. The reason I'm doing that and I'm not bringing it up here like that is because if you look at the Richard Williams reference, you'll see that the upper portion of this leg, it goes up, it goes down, and then it goes up again on the down pose. And because we're only working with a limited amount of keyframes here, that's going to cause like sort of a double pop in the leg. If you had more keyframes, you could probably get away with it. But let's just see what we've got so far. So we've got our contacts, we've got our down pose where he comes down, we've got our passing where he comes up, we've got our up pose where he's on his tiptoes and he's at the highest point of his walk cycle, back down to the contact, and then repeat but with the opposite legs. So if we turn solo mode on for that, and let's just check these poses. Yeah, looks pretty good, I think. I just want to check that these legs are evenly spaced out. So if we compare this leg, this floor leg, you can see here that the spacing is even. And that's going to really help us when we're moving the whole character across the screen so that there's no kind of popping with those feet. And we can do the same for this leg as well. So this is our problem one here, because you can see that these are all good, but then this needs to be more or less about there, and it's not at the moment. So let's fix that quickly. So we'll take that, we'll just move it back a little bit, and we can adjust that foot a little bit more. So we can move this head a little bit as well. So if we go to the head and neck peg, and what I'm going to do is on the downs, I'm just going to move that head down a little bit. And that is just for the downs there. We'll copy and paste that to there. And then on the ups, which is this one, can have the head come up a little bit. So I'll take that and I'll put it in the same place as the other up. And we'll just get rid of those other keyframes that we don't need. And then we can just tween these and we'll change it to ones just for the time being. And I've just put those keyframes there, just so I can put those tweens in between the ups and the downs. And then we're going to make some adjustments with the head and the arms afterwards. With this foot here on the downs, I am just going to kind of make it a little bit squashed, just to emphasize the impact of that foot on the floor. Do the same with this one. So now we've got all our key poses, but as I said at the beginning, we are working on 2s over 16 frames. So I'm going to push these down, and then I'm going to actually cut off that last frame because it's the same as that. With these arms are looking a little bit too rigid. So what I'm going to do with those is find arms both, and I want some more kind of easing as it comes up and then it comes down. So we're going to go find those arms, make sure it's collapsed there. So this is our arms both layer here. And we're going to find those end positions, which is basically on the contacts. And every other keyframe we are just going to delete. And with these, I'm going to put some easing in. So I'm going to click that button there. And let's just put 40 and 40. So that means it will ease out. That one doesn't matter because we're just only worried about this one coming out. So apply next, that'll jump to the next keyframe. We're going to put 40 and 40 there, so it eases in and then eases out. And then finally it will ease in with that one. And then we can put a tween on those. These arms will gradually come up and then slow down there and then accelerate there. We need to change it to 2s, so we can do that with this button here. So this is what we've got now. With these arms, they move in the opposite directions to the legs, but they don't have the exact same timing. They're actually a little bit delayed. Actually, before I do that, let's finish these arms. So as this arm comes forward, I'm just going to have a little bit of overlap, which means it's kind of dragging a little bit. Then that will follow that hand. So I'm just looking at the previous position of that hand there. We can bring that arm a little bit more towards there. So this is what we've got. We've got that hand. We've got our hand doing a nice overlap and follow through there. Let's do the same with the other hand. So that will be dragging from this position. Can't really see it because it's behind the body there. So this is what we've got so far. And he's looking pretty good. However, what I would like to do is get this face peg here. And for the contacts, because our head rotates as well when we're walking to sort of like balance out our body. So our legs and hip turn one way, our shoulders turn the other way, and our head turns that way. So I'm just going to move this face just a little bit. So the shoulders all the way back there. So let's move that face just over there a little bit. And we'll copy and paste that there. We can get rid of these. And I'm going to tween these. Just like what we did with the arms, just put some easing on it and then change that to 2s. So that head's looking a little bit rigid there. So I am going to do a little bit of easing. So let's just delete those. And I'm actually going to copy and paste that and that one there. I'm going to tween those. Let's try 30 on these. And then we'll change that to 2s. Get rid of these frames here. Let's see if that's any better. There we go, our head is moving a little bit smoother now. So yeah, let's take our head and arms peg, and as I mentioned before, the timing is slightly delayed, so I'm just going to move these all down to, then I'm going to take this keyframe here, I'm going to paste it there, we can get rid of that. So now you can see our timing of the legs and the arms, and if we have a look at the legs, you can see that the feet move nicely across the floor. We can do this dingle dongle as well. So let's look for that. Let's clear out these keyframes. So the head is at its most down position there. So we can have that like that. And then we'll paste that there as well. And then this one is going to be there. And then we can do a bit of tweeny. Just going to put 30s on them. Change it to 2s. So the timing needs to change. So let's try doing that. So it's got a little bit of a wobble there. And there we have it. We've got our profile walk cycle complete. So now it's time for the quarter walk cycle, which is very similar, but there are a few more things to consider. So let's move down the timeline. So I've got the contacts here for the quarter walk, and it's very similar, but something I want to mention is the position of these legs. So with the side profile view, the legs kind of went like that in relation to the hip. But with this, because we're at the quarter view and the middle of the body is kind of, you know, here, they're actually coming into the middle or more towards the middle and then back out. And that's the same with the arms as well. I have involved the shoulders, whereas in the profile walk cycle I didn't, because you didn't see the shoulders. So with this contact, I've also widened this hip and I've matched up that with the legs. And then with this one, this is the opposite. So I've squeezed the hip down and matched it up again. And I've also like thinned out the t-shirt as well when the legs do cross over. Something else I've also done, which you can also do with the profile view as well, is I've put a slight bend in the arms as well, just to make him look less rigid and cut-outy. Something with the head, with the face, I've actually put a little bit of a slant on it here, just to kind of give the illusion that his head is moving this way as well as this way, like you would do in a walk. And I've done the opposite with this as well, where put a little bit of a slant on that. So those are our contact poses. Oh yeah, and also with this foot, I've got this this shoe sole element here, which is masked inside of that foot, and I've just brought that in just to give the illusion that his foot is coming out and facing more towards us because he is at a quarter angle. But everything else is more or less the same as what we did with the profile walk cycle. So we've got our contacts there. So this is what we've got for our passes. And I am putting a little bit of a squash on the torso as well. So then the quarters walk cycle ends up looking something like this. So you can see there's a little bit of a squash and stretch on the t-shirt, and the logo is stretching across as his shoulder moves back as well. So that's for a quarter walk cycle, which is moving across the screen. If you wanted a quarter walk cycle where he's kind of moving towards the camera rather than horizontally across the screen, instead of those two lines going straight across, you would just adjust them so that the perspective kind of matches your background. And then I've just done the legs for this example, but if I press play, those are just following that floor reference there. So then if we want him moving across the screen, we're going to go over to this path peg here, and we're going to put a keyframe there. And let's say we want him to move across the screen. Say we want him to move from here and then moving over to here. We can tween that. Obviously that's too fast. We'd have to move that further down timeline, and we'd have to loop that cycle a few times as well, so that he would be moving across the screen like that. You'd have to change this to 2s as well, and then he would move across the screen like that.
So, in conclusion, treadmill style walk, floor guides so the feet don't pop up and down, start with the contacts, and then the passes, and then do the ups and downs. Make sure the floor feet are evenly spaced out. Keep the spacing consistent between poses, which will help keep the animation smooth and not choppy. If you have an onion skin feature available, that can help. Make sure your character follows a smooth up and down motion. Include easing where necessary. You can ease the feet as they come off the floor so they don't look like they're hitting a wall, and that's the same with the arms as they reach their peaks. Do your follow through and overlap with the hands, arms, and whatever else. Delay the arm and head movements by a couple of frames.
Thank you so much for watching. If you did find that video helpful, please feel free to like and subscribe. If you want to keep up to date with any future videos, you can hit that notification bell. And if you've got any comments or questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments section below, and I'll do my very best to answer them. If you want to support the channel further, I have a Ko-fi page, and I live stream over on Twitch 4 days a week. Links for all of those in the description below. Thanks again, I'll see you next time!